A 17-year-old boy living in a quiet suburban town vanished after leaving home for a first date on a warm Friday night in 2016. Police initially believed he ran away another teen, chasing romance and freedom. But there was no note, no withdrawal, no trace of planning. His family insisted something was wrong. Years passed. Leads dried up. Then, 6 years later, deep in a wooded ravine miles from where he disappeared, investigators uncovered something blackened and warped by fire, a phone that shouldn't have existed anymore. And when they powered it on, one final message reframed everything. The notification arrived just after sunset, a soft vibration against the wooden desk that felt louder than it should have. He glanced at his phone, smiled, and typed back quickly, thumbs moving with the restless energy of someone standing on the edge of something new. Outside, the neighborhood was settling into its usual Friday rhythm, sprinklers clicking on, distant laughter, a warm breeze carrying the smell of cut grass. Inside the house, nothing felt dangerous. Nothing felt final. He was 17, old enough to crave independence, young enough to still announce where he was going. His mother noticed the nervous excitement immediately. "Going out?" she asked from the kitchen, drying her hands on a towel. "Yeah, just meeting someone," he replied, trying to sound casual. "Someone from school?" "Kind of. We've been talking online." It wasn't unusual. He wasn't reckless. He was quiet, polite. The kind of kid teachers described as steady. His life followed predictable lines: school, part-time work, late-night gaming with friends, weekend dinners with family. That was why the idea of him running away never quite fit. Even that night, there were routines. He grabbed his jacket, checked his wallet, made sure his phone was fully charged. His younger sibling watched from the hallway as he tied his shoes. "You'll be back late?" "Nah," he said. "Probably not." Those would be the last words anyone in his family heard him say. The girl he was meeting had a name, a profile picture, a way of typing that felt personal. They'd been chatting for weeks, nothing intense, just jokes, music, shared complaints about school. She suggested they finally meet. Neutral location, not far. He told a friend about it earlier that day, half excited, half nervous. "Be careful," the friend joked. "What if she's fake?" "She's not," he laughed. She sent snaps. At 7:42 p.m., he stepped out the front door. A porch light clicked on behind him, briefly outlining his figure before he disappeared down the driveway. A neighbor's security camera would later catch a blurry glimpse of him walking toward the street, phone in hand, head down, then nothing. By 9:15 p.m., his mother sent a text. "Everything okay?" No reply. By 10, concern crept in. Calls went straight to voicemail. His friends hadn't heard from him either. The girl's profile, once active, had gone silent, messages delivered but unread. The digital glow that had connected them suddenly felt like a dead end. Police would later say the first hours are critical, but that night passed in fragments. Pacing footsteps, whispered phone calls, the front door opening again and again as if he might still come back. His mother sat on the couch, phone clenched in both hands, replaying their last conversation, searching for something she might have missed. When officers arrived, they asked standard questions. Was he upset? Any history of running away? Problems at school? The answers were always the same: no, no, no. Still, the initial assumption settled in. Quietly, teenagers leave sometimes. They chase something new, they come back. But by morning, his bed was still empty. His phone, still silent. As investigators began looking into the girl he was supposed to meet, something unsettling emerged. The profile photos traced back to stock images. The account had been created only months earlier. No friends. No digital footprint beyond their conversations. It was as if she had never existed at all. The date wasn't canceled, it wasn't missed. It was never real. And somewhere between a quiet suburban street and a meeting that led nowhere, a 17-year-old boy had vanished, leaving behind only questions that would take years to begin answering. By the second day, the silence had become unbearable. It wasn't just that he hadn't come home, it was that his digital presence, once constant and familiar, had frozen in time. His phone was still off, or dead, or somewhere it couldn't be reached. For a teenager who never went anywhere without it, that absence felt louder than any scream. Detectives began where the trail was thinnest and most fragile, online. His mother sat at the dining table as an officer gently asked for passwords, explaining each step as if careful language might soften the intrusion. "We just want to see who he talked to last," the detective said. She nodded, staring at the screen. "Everything is in there," she whispered. "That's his life." Message threads scrolled past friends, classmates, jokes, plans that would never happen. Then they reached her. The girl. The reason he'd left the house smiling. At first, the conversation looked ordinary. Casual banter, emojis, a gradual shift from small talk to familiarity. But as analysts dug deeper, inconsistencies surfaced. The account had no long-term history. The photos were convincing but impersonal. No friends tagged, no comments from people who knew her offline. When they reverse-searched the images, the truth cracked open. They appeared on unrelated websites, years old, reused under different names. "She's not real," one investigator said quietly. Police requested data from the platform, hoping for an IP address, a location, anything. What they got was frustratingly vague. The account had been accessed through masked networks, bouncing signals across states, possibly countries. Whoever was behind it knew how to disappear. Meanwhile, the official narrative began to form. A teenage boy leaves home to meet someone. No signs of struggle, no witnesses, no body. "Voluntary departure," the report read. "Runaway." His family pushed back immediately. "He didn't even take a backpack," his father said, voice tight with anger. "He left his charger, his clothes, his savings." The detective sighed. "We're not closing the case," he said, "but we have to consider all possibilities." Friends were interviewed next. One recalled seeing him online that evening, active later than expected. Another mentioned a strange post deleted now uploaded briefly to his account. A photo of a dark street poorly lit, captioned with a single word, "Here." No one had thought much of it at the time. Cell phone records narrowed the last confirmed signal to 8:31 p.m. A brief ping off a tower several miles from his home, near a stretch of undeveloped land bordered by trees and drainage paths. It wasn't a place people went on dates. It wasn't a place people went at all. Search teams were dispatched. Dogs traced his scent to a sidewalk near that location and then lost it. No discarded clothing, no wallet, no phone. Just empty ground and the hum of insects in the summer heat. Days turned into weeks. Tips flooded in at first, then slowed to a trickle. Someone claimed to see him at a bus station. Another swore they spotted him walking along a highway. Each lead dissolved under scrutiny. Surveillance footage showed nothing. Witnesses contradicted themselves. Online, the girl's account vanished entirely. For his family, the digital quiet was torture. His social media profiles became memorials in waiting, frozen snapshots of a life interrupted. Messages still arrived, friends checking in, strangers offering theories, psychics promising answers. None of them could explain how a boy could simply step out for a date and fall off the map. One investigator, reviewing the logs late one night, paused at the last outgoing message from his phone. It wasn't to the girl, it was to a friend, sent just minutes before the final signal ping. "This is weird, I think I'm in the wrong place." There was no reply. And wherever he had gone next, he took the truth with him, leaving behind only a digital shadow that refused to explain how the night had gone so wrong. The first search began at dawn, when the air was still cool and hopeful lies were easier to believe. Volunteers gathered near the edge of the neighborhood, where his last signal had pinged, clutching coffee cups and printed flyers with his face staring back at them, smiling, alive, untouched by whatever had swallowed him whole. His father stood near the police tape, hands shoved deep into his pockets, eyes fixed on the tree line, as if sheer will might force the ground to give his son back. Search dogs were released shortly after. They worked methodically, noses low, tails stiff, pulling handlers toward a narrow sidewalk that cut along a drainage channel. For a brief moment, the energy shifted. "They've got something," someone whispered. Then the dogs stopped. The scent ended abruptly, as if he had stepped into thin air. Handlers exchanged looks. One of them shook his head slowly. "It's like he vanished right here." Officers searched the surrounding area: thick brush, culverts, abandoned lots, the shallow creek that ran parallel to the road. Nothing. No phone, no shoe, no sign of a struggle. The terrain offered 100 places to hide a secret, and none that offered answers. His mother joined the search despite being asked not to. She walked until her legs trembled, calling his name into the trees, her voice cracking as the hours dragged on. "If you can hear me," she shouted, "just answer me." There was only wind. And insects. And the dull realization that whatever had happened was not going to resolve itself quickly. As days passed, the operation expanded. Helicopters scanned from above. Dive teams checked nearby water. Detectives knocked on doors and reviewed traffic cameras, hoping to catch a glimpse of him walking, hitchhiking, getting into a car. Each lead sparked a rush of adrenaline and then collapsed into nothing. One tip suggested he'd been seen arguing with someone near the tower location. Another claimed a dark vehicle had been parked along the road that night. Witness statements conflicted. Time blurred details. Memory became unreliable. Inside the family home, life froze in a different way. His bedroom stayed exactly as it was: bed unmade, posters on the wall, laundry half folded. His siblings slept with the light on, jumping at every sound. At night, his mother replayed his last text message over and over, the words "wrong place" echoing louder with each reading. Weeks turned into months. The case file thickened while momentum thinned. Detectives reassigned, search parties scaled back. The phrase, "no new leads," appeared again and again in reports. Behind closed doors, the theory hardened. He had left willingly. Maybe he'd realized the girl wasn't real. Maybe he panicked. Maybe he didn't want to come back. His family refused to accept it. His father drove the route again and again, stopping at the exact spot where the dogs had lost the scent. He stared at the ground, convinced something had been missed. "People don't just disappear," he muttered to himself. "Not like this," one detective quietly agreed. Late at night, he revisited the digital evidence, the messages, the fake profile, the masked IP addresses. Catfishing cases were becoming more common, but most ended in extortion or embarrassment. This one ended in absence. That bothered him. Still, without physical evidence, the case stalled. A year passed. Then, too, birthdays came and went, marked by candles no one wanted to light. Friends graduated, his social media accounts filled with messages addressed to someone who couldn't respond. "We miss you. Please come home. If you're out there." Eventually the case was reclassified. Not closed, but no longer active. A quiet administrative decision that felt like a verdict to the family. The world, it seemed, was ready to move on. But one person refused to let go. His sibling, now older, began retracing the digital trail themselves, learning about online predators, fake profiles, burner phones. Late one night, scrolling through archived data, they noticed something others had overlooked. The account that lured him had briefly interacted with another local teen months earlier. That teen had stopped responding. No report had been filed. No disappearance followed. Just silence. It wasn't proof. It wasn't enough. But it was the first sign in years that his vanishing might not have been random, and that somewhere, buried beneath time and indifference, the truth was still waiting to be uncovered. By the third year, the silence had developed weight. It pressed down on the house, on conversations, on the way his name was spoken, if it was spoken at all. Hope didn't disappear suddenly. It eroded, grain by grain, worn down by unanswered calls and empty inboxes. The family learned how to live inside the absence, even as it hollowed them out. His bedroom became a time capsule. Dust settled, but nothing moved. His mother still opened the door some mornings, standing there longer than necessary, as if the room might rearrange itself back into normalcy. Maybe today, she would think, not say. Thinking felt safer. The official case sat dormant. Occasionally, a detective would call, usually, to say there was nothing new. Tips still came in, but they were different now. Less specific, more desperate. A sighting in another state, a rumor from social media, A dream someone felt compelled to report. His sibling never stopped looking. Late at night, they revisited archived chats, cached pages, fragments of data most people wouldn't bother saving. They joined online forums dedicated to catfishing and online luring cases, reading story after story that ended with theft, blackmail, humiliation. Very few ended with someone gone forever. That distinction mattered. One post caught their attention: a discussion about burner phones, often being destroyed and discarded in remote areas to eliminate digital trails. Burned, one commenter wrote. Crushed. Thrown where no one looks. That word lingered. 6 years after the disappearance, a hiker entered a wooded ravine not far from the cell tower where the last ping had registered. It wasn't on any official trail, a steep, overlooked cut in the land where trash sometimes accumulated. After heavy rains, debris shifted. Things surfaced. The hiker noticed something dark lodged between rocks near a cluster of charred branches. At first, they thought it was melted plastic from an old campfire. Then they saw the shape. Rectangular, compact, familiar. Police were called. The area was secured, though there was no dramatic rush, just routine procedure, the kind reserved for objects no one expects to matter. An evidence technician carefully lifted it free. The smell of old smoke clung to it even after all those years. It was a phone. Burned, warped, the screen spiderwebbed beneath soot and ash. It should have been useless, destroyed beyond recognition. Still, something about it unsettled the officers on scene. Maybe it was the location. Maybe it was the timing. Maybe it was the fact that no other debris around it showed the same level of heat damage. When the family was notified, the call came without promises. "We found an item," the detective said carefully. "It may or may not be related." His mother sat down before her legs gave out. "A phone?" she asked. "Yes." No one slept that night. Forensic technicians worked slowly, delicately, as if handling something fragile and alive. The casing was damaged, but the internal components were better preserved than expected. Fire had scarred it but not erased it. A small miracle born of angles and oxygen deprivation. Days passed in unbearable suspense. Then the call came. It powered on, the detective said. The phone belonged to him. The serial number matched. The model matched. Even the faint scratch on the back, something his sibling remembered teasing him about, was there beneath the burn marks. 6 years after he vanished, his voice was suddenly closer than it had ever been. But the phone didn't just confirm where he had been. It held fragments of what he had seen. Messages partially recovered, location data that contradicted earlier assumptions, photos that were never sent. And one final outgoing message time-stamped just minutes after the one investigators already knew about. A message no one had ever received. As detectives prepared to open that file, one question loomed heavier than all the others combined. If the phone had been burned on purpose, what exactly was someone trying to destroy? And why hadn't they succeeded? The phone lay inside an evidence bag under harsh fluorescent light. Its surface blackened and blistered, edges warped as if it had tried and failed to disappear. Even seasoned investigators felt it. That quiet shift in the room when an object stops being just an object and becomes a witness. It shouldn't have survived, the forensic technician said, adjusting his gloves. Fire like that usually kills everything, but this one hadn't. The lab worked in silence, broken only by the hum of machines and the soft clicking of keys. Piece by piece, they rebuilt access, bypassing damaged circuits, coaxing power through scorched pathways. When the screen finally flickered to life, dim and cracked, no one spoke. For a moment, 6 years collapsed into a single breath. His name appeared at the top. Messages populated slowly, some corrupted beyond recovery, others fragmented but legible enough to raise the hair on the back of the neck. Investigators began mapping timestamps, comparing them to known movements, reconstructing a night that had resisted clarity for years. The conversation with the fake profile ended earlier than expected. The tone shifted abruptly from casual to curt. "You're not where you said you'd be," he had typed. The reply never came. Then came photos. Not selfies, not landmarks. Accidental images, likely taken while the phone was in his hand. A blurred shot of asphalt illuminated by streetlight, trees looming at odd angles, and one image that made the room go still, a dark silhouette near the edge of the frame, barely human-shaped, standing just beyond the reach of the light. "Zoom in," a detective said. The image degraded under magnification, but the posture remained unsettling, upright, waiting. Location data painted a clearer, more disturbing picture. After the last known ping, the phone moved on foot at first, then faster, inconsistent with walking. The path cut through areas never searched thoroughly, places dismissed early on as irrelevant. It ended near the ravine where the phone was eventually found. Burn patterns suggested intent. The fire hadn't been large or careless. It was controlled, focused on the device itself. Someone had wanted the phone gone, not lost, not damaged, erased. And yet, something had interrupted the process. Rain, perhaps. Or panic. Then they recovered the final message. Time-stamped 8:47 p.m. Outgoing. Unsent. The room felt smaller as the text appeared on screen. "I think they lied. I don't feel safe. If something happens..." It cut off there. No period, no goodbye. His mother read the message later that day, hands trembling, tears sliding silently down her face. "He knew," she whispered. "He knew something was wrong." Investigators debated theories late into the night. Catfishing for robbery? Luring gone wrong? Something darker? The silhouette in the photo fueled speculation, but evidence demanded restraint. What mattered most was this: he hadn't run away. He hadn't chosen to disappear. He had sensed danger and had tried to tell someone. New warrants were issued. Data requests reopened. Analysts searched for similar profiles, similar language patterns, similar masked IP behaviors. Slowly, connections began to form, not enough for answers, but enough to confirm this wasn't isolated. The phone had done what it was never meant to do. It had survived. And in surviving, it had shifted the case from a quiet tragedy to an active investigation once more. Press coverage reignited. Tips poured in again, this time, sharper, more focused. Someone recognized the pattern. Someone remembered an account. Someone, somewhere, knew more than they had ever admitted. The ravine was searched again, meticulously. Soil samples taken. Burn debris analyzed. The land gave up nothing new, but it no longer felt empty. It felt watched, like a place that had held onto a secret for too long and was finally loosening its grip. The case is no longer cold, but it isn't solved either, because the phone answered one question while raising another, far more haunting one. If someone went to such lengths to destroy his last connection to the world, what else were they trying to make sure was never found? And, more importantly, where is he now? The renewed investigation brought noise back into a case that had lived too long in silence. Police cars returned to familiar streets. Detectives knocked on doors they hadn't visited in years. His name appeared again on screens, in headlines, spoken aloud instead of carefully avoided. For his family, the attention was both relief and agony-proof. He hadn't been forgotten, and confirmation that the ending was still missing. Investigators focused on patterns now, not just his case. Similar fake profiles, similar language quirks, the same rhythm of charm followed by urgency. Analysts built timelines that overlapped disturbingly close to other reported, luring attempts: teens who had shown up to meet someone who never existed, teens who left feeling uneasy but made it home. He hadn't. One detective stood before the family with careful honesty. "We believe this was intentional," he said. "Whoever did this, planned it. And they've done it before, or tried to." The ravine became a focal point. Cadaver dogs were brought in. Soil was sifted inch by inch. Nothing surfaced. No remains. No clothing. Just the phone's silent accusation and the knowledge that someone had stood there long enough to light a fire and walk away. His mother struggled most with the final message. The unsent words looped endlessly in her mind. If something happens. She imagined 1,000 endings to that sentence, and none of them brought peace. At night, she wondered if he'd looked around for help. If he'd called out, if he'd believed, even for a moment, that he might not make it home. His sibling turned that pain into resolve. They spoke publicly now, giving interviews, warning parents and teens about online luring. This wasn't a mistake, they said into microphones. This was someone pretending to be human long enough to get close. Years had changed them all. Grief didn't fade. It adapted. It became quieter, sharper, something carried instead of fought. Holidays were still hard, birthdays still unbearable. But the truth, partial as it was, had given their suffering shape. He hadn't left them. He hadn't chosen to vanish. He had been taken. The case remains open. Somewhere, there is a person who knows exactly what happened after 8:47 p.m. Someone who remembers the heat of the fire, the weight of a phone in their hand, the decision to destroy evidence rather than risk being seen. Someone who may believe they succeeded, but they didn't. Because 6 years later, the phone still spoke. It told investigators where to look. It told a family they were right to keep fighting. And it told a story that refused to stay buried, one of deception, fear, and a boy who sensed the danger just moments too late. There are no final answers yet, no confirmed resting place, no arrest to close the file. Just a quiet understanding that the truth is closer than it has ever been, and that time, once an enemy, may now be an ally. In his bedroom, the door is still closed most days. But sometimes his mother opens it and lets the light in. She stands there, breathing, imagining a future where the mystery ends not with headlines, but with certainty. Until then, the burned phone remains locked in evidence storage, no longer just a device, but a reminder that even when someone vanishes, they can still leave behind proof that they were here.